Billionaire catches MAID embracing his disabled daughter and uncovers a heartbreaking secret. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The sound of my daughter's laughter filled the air one moment, pure and innocent. Then came the crash. The shattered glass. My heart stopped as I turned the corner. She sat there on the floor, cradled in the arms of our maid, Sophia. The stark contrast hit me hard. My daughter, Grace, with her bright red wheelchair and sparkling blue eyes, looked so fragile. But there was something different about the way Sophia held her. It wasn't just a casual embrace. No. My heart raced as I noticed the tears streaming down Sophia's cheeks. What's happening? I couldn't find my voice. My mind swirled, cruel thoughts racing. Was this a secret bond one never knew about? Grace leaned into Sophia, her small frame trembling ever so slightly. The silence felt heavy. I could hear the soft hum of the air conditioning, the distant ticking of the clock, marking each agonizing second. My whole world felt like it was twisting. There was a depth in Sophia's eyes. Something desperate, something that hinted at unspoken pain. I took a step closer, my breath caught in my throat. Sophia, what's wrong? My voice cracked. The tension in the air wrapped around us, like a thick fog. My fingers trembled as I watched. I had always seen Sophia as just a caretaker, someone to help with the dishes, to guide Grace out of her wheelchair. But now this was something else entirely. Sophia pulled away, her breathing ragged. She looked at me, fear etched across her face. I'm sorry, sir, I didn't mean to, but then something shifted between us. A flicker of understanding sparked. She knew something about Grace that I didn't, something that could shatter everything. I could feel my heart pounding, a drum echoing in the quiet hallway. Please tell me, I demanded, the urgency clawing at me. What is it? What's going on? The words hung in the air, wrapped in confusion and fear. She opened her mouth, but the sound didn't come. Instead, her eyes fell to the ground. The moment stretched. My mind raced through memories. Hopeful days. Nights filled with laughter. And now, could it all come crashing down? Then I remembered the whispers. The subtle hints of something being wrong. I could no longer ignore it. What if everything I knew was a lie? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The days that followed that haunting moment were a blur of confusion and anxiety. I found myself ruminating over every interaction I'd ever had with Sophia, searching for clues, details that might reveal the truth hidden beneath her tears. But instead of clarity, the only thing I felt was an emotional tempest that threatened to drown me. Grace remained cheerful on the outside, her laughter echoing through our luxurious home, yet I knew it was a mask. As I wheeled her out into our expansive garden, the vibrant sun shined brightly, seemingly mocking my internal chaos. I watched as she played with her toys, lost in her own world, and it broke my heart knowing that I might be leading her into an abyss of confusion. Sophia, can you come outside? I called, my tone firm but filled with a nervous quiver. She appeared at the doorway, her features taut with reluctance. When she entered the garden, every step felt shaky and heavy, like she was dragging her past along behind her. What do you want? She asked softly, avoiding eye contact, the words caught in my throat. Clarity had become elusive, like the whisper of a dream slipping from my grasp. We need to talk about Grace, I finally managed to say. The mention of my daughter's name. Sophia's expression involuntarily shifted, a crack in her composed facade, revealing a flicker of emotions beneath. What about her? My heart raced. You were upset earlier. You were holding her like. She was something precious, something you've been hiding from me. What do you know, Sophia? Please. Sophia's lip trembled as I stood there, flooded with the fight-or-flight instinct. For a brief moment, we were trapped in the web of shared silence, each second weighing heavily upon us. Just when I thought she would dismiss me again, her features softened a fraction. Mr. Hayes, sometimes children see things, feel things that adults forget to listen to. Her voice was wispy, almost fragile. Grace, she's more attuned to the world around her than you realized. It was my turn to turn away, clenched fists balled at my sides. What does that even mean? What's wrong with her? Is there something you're not telling me? The wind rustled leaves above us as if nature was conspiring to draw out our secrets. I shouldn't speak of this. Please, it's not my place. You need to ask Grace, she insisted, her voice a desperate whisper. Ask her? I scoffed, anger bubbling just under the surface. How can I ask her something I don't even understand? Am I supposed to expect her to unveil whatever darkness is lurking? Sophia stepped forward, her eyes pleading. Grace is a brave girl. But sometimes bravery also means hiding pain. She's not like other children. Her world is filled with things we can't see. Each word felt loaded, as if they were shattering tiny glass figurines of potential truths that I had built up around my daughter. I need to know. I raised my voice, the anguish spilling out. And in that moment, a small voice chimed through the air like a small bell ringing softly. Daddy, I don't want to talk about it, but I'm okay. Grace's words echoed through the garden, a chilling reminder that I was not only losing my grip on the situation but possibly on her as well. She looked up at me with those innocent blue eyes, but they didn't reflect the usual sparkle. They seemed deeper, as if she was protecting something beneath the surface. Did I do something wrong? She asked, tilting her head, her expression a mixture of confusion and innocence. Sophia shot me a glance, one filled with urgency, as if she understood the sudden weight of expectation leaning over us. I felt torn. Do I reach out to Grace, or do I pull back and allow her to maintain the fragile bubble she seemed desperate to preserve? Before I could gather the fragments of my thoughts, Sophia stepped back, her own guilt palpable in the air between us. Children process things in layers. It's not your fault if you don't understand everything they feel. With that, she turned, heading for the door, leaving me standing there, raw with unanswered questions. I knelt down beside Grace, forcing a smile that felt like a mask of my own. Sweetheart, I whispered, you can tell me anything. Her lip quivered slightly as her gaze shifted to the flowers swaying softly in the breeze. Promise you won't get mad? I promise, I said, bracing for whatever storm might follow. Just a small pause lingered as her brow furrowed, a storm brewing in the silence. Sometimes I see things, dark things. Things that hurt. But I'm okay. Really, she said those words. The world around me dissolved momentarily. I was left reeling, the weight of unspoken secrets gripping my throat tighter than I had ever anticipated. And then, just as my heart began to sink into despair, a ripple of resolve surged through me. No matter what shadows lurked around my daughter, no matter how deep and hidden the truth was, I was her father. I would keep searching. I would keep fighting. Grace, I said gently, I love you no matter what. No matter what you see. But as my gaze connected with hers, the look I saw there struck me like an electric shock. The unfathomable depths of her eyes held a world I couldn't begin to comprehend. Perhaps there was an even greater mystery lurking just beyond my reach, and just when I thought I would take another step toward unmasking it, she whispered words that twisted the atmosphere between us, shattering the fragile moment I thought would bring clarity. They're coming for us, Daddy, she said, voice trembling, a note of terror threading through her words. And in that instant, the world around me blurred, revealing the frightening reality I would have to confront, further spiraling into the truth I never wanted to face. The evening air grew heavy as dusk descended upon us, casting long shadows across the garden. Grace's words hung in the air, vibrating with an unspoken dread that wrapped around my chest like a vice. I could hardly breathe, and the color drained from my face, replaced by a cold realization that all the chaos within had just witnessed a deeper layer of complexity, a layer that now threatened our sanctuary. What do you mean by that, Grace? I stammered, urgency fighting against the fear clenching my heart. Who's coming for us? Her gaze dropped to her little fingers, twisting them nervously, her earlier bravado slipping away like grains of sand through an hourglass. They watch me when I play. I don't like it, Daddy. They're not nice. The words seemed surreal, as if plucked from a nightmare, and I had to remind myself that it was my child speaking. A child I had always deemed safe within the confines of our home, a child who suddenly seemed so vulnerable, lost within a maze of fears I couldn't begin to comprehend. Who watches you, sweetheart? I pressed gently, kneeling closer, so our eyes were on the same level. I don't know their names, she said, her voice trembling, but I can feel them. They're always in the corner at the end of my dreams. An icy shiver crawled up my spine. The weight of the world settled heavily upon my shoulders, and I feared I was losing my grasp on her reality with each inquiry. I glanced at the garden gate, half expecting someone to emerge from the shadows, but all that loomed was the thickening darkness. Sweetheart, I murmured. What do you see exactly? You can trust me. I'm right here. A whisper of memory flickered through my mind, nights when I'd lulled her to sleep with stories of magic and wonder, never once imagining those tales might take a sinister turn in her mind. Sometimes they don't have faces. Sometimes they look like fog or shadows, but they feel sad. Her eyes were wide, shimmering with unspilled tears, each one a reminder of the fragility of youth. I think they want something. Nah, it's just your imagination, darling, I attempted to soothe, though the urgency of her words gnawed at the edges of my sanity. You know how dreams can play tricks on us, right? You're safe here with me. Grace's head shook furiously. No, I know the difference between dreams and real. They're real, Daddy. The desperation in her voice plunged a spear of fear through me. What do you want me to do? I asked softly, trying to swallow the worry rippling through my chest. She stepped closer, taking my hand in hers with an unexpected fierceness. Find them. I think they're here. In our house. A chill swept through my veins as I recalled Sophia's word, children see things adults overlook. What if Grace wasn't just imagining the darkness? What if there was some lurking dread festering just beneath the surface of our perfect world? Okay, Grace, I whispered, breathing deeply, adrenaline surging through me. We'll figure this out together. Well, keep looking. But promise me, if you see or hear anything just then. A soft but urgent knock came at the door, slicing through the tension in our little bubble. I exchanged a glance with Grace, her eyes flaring wide, an unspoken plea bouncing between us. Stay here, I instructed, though I knew it was futile to think I could shield her from whatever might emerge, though part of me was desperate to protect her. I stood, my legs unsteady as I approached the door, dread pooling at the center of my stomach. As I swung it open, a face approached from the darkness, a face I'd never expected to see again. It was my old friend, Matthew, whose presence hitched the breath in my throat. Hey, man, he said, voice low, as though the shadows draped around him were real. I need to talk to you. It's urgent. Matthew, I replied, confusion thick in my voice. What are you doing here? His expression was grave, dark eyes alight with unspoken secrets and barely held fear. It's about Grace. There's something you don't know. The words electrified the air around us, and as my guilt from earlier collided with the urge to protect my daughter, my heart raced again. I turned back to find Grace watching from the garden, shadows dancing eerily across her small figure, an ominous sense of foreboding echoing in the stillness. Daddy, who is that? She called, worry etched into her features. I looked back at Matthew, the secrets on the tip of his tongue, waiting to be unveiled. The closing sun seemed to draw closer, with every second feeling like an impending storm. Stay there, Grace, I warned before turning back to Matthew, urgency pushing me forward. What are you hiding? He stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper as his gaze softened. It's about the things Grace sees. You need to prepare. And in that moment of shared vulnerability, I sensed the air shift, like the world itself was winding up for an inevitable confrontation or revelation that would shatter the very foundation of everything I thought I was protecting. A palpable tension clouded the night air as Matthew stood before me, his brow furrowed with concern. I saw shadows dance uneasily at the edges of his eyes, and anxiety seeped into the space between us. The distant hum of night creatures felt like an impending prelude. What do you mean by things Grace sees? I pressed, clutching the door as if it could anchor me in this storm. Matthew took a deep breath, glancing over his shoulder as if fearing someone might overhear. You have to believe me. I didn't want to say anything before, but I've seen similar things. A friend from my childhood experienced this. His voice cracked slightly, binding us in a shared haunted past. He's been searching for answers. He thinks there's something about children like Grace. Children like Grace? My mind raced back to her bright spirit, the way her laughter echoed in our house, filling the rooms with warmth. To think of that brilliance dimmed by a darkness no one could understand sent icy tendrils creeping around my heart. What do you mean? Innocent eyes sometimes see beyond the veil, and it can attract attention, he whispered urgently. There are groups of people who are obsessed with children who see things. They want to know what Grace knows. They believe they can learn from her. It's not for good. His words hung like thick smoke in the humid air, suffocating and surreal. Fear clawed its way up my throat as I recalled Grace's description of shadowy figures, how she felt watched even when the world seemed harmless. But why? Why would anyone want her? Matthew's gaze hardened, and he spoke with trepidation. Because they believe children like her possess a gift, something powerful. They want to exploit it. The gravity of his words struck me like a physical blow. I struggled to process what he was saying, wrestling with a sudden wave of protectiveness for Grace. You have to help me, Matthew. I can't lose her to whatever this is. Nobody can know I told you, he said, leaning forward. There's a small community that monitors these children watching, waiting. You need to keep her safe, especially at night. With that gift comes a vulnerability. An eerie stillness filled the air, and I recalled the times Grace would come running to me, desperate and frantic, sharing what she meddled with in her dreams. If it's true, if they are really out there, I won't let them come for her. I'll never let them touch her. Matthew nodded, sincere in his concern, but I could see his heart borne heavy with the burden of knowledge. The hardest part is that Grace may not be the only one. There may be others in the area. Children chosen, if you will. You need to stay vigilant. A flicker of desperation ignited within me. There must be something we can do. We can warn others. We can find these kids and protect them. Be careful. Even mentioning this can attract unwanted attention, Matthew cautioned, eyes darting like fireflies in the darkness. For now, focus on Grace. Keep her close. While he turned to leave, my heart ached in ways I had never envisioned. The weight of the world rested on our fragile shoulders, a burden I was determined to share. Matthew, I called after him, the impassioned urgency in my voice mirroring the heartache stirring deep within. Promise me you'll tell me if you find out more. I need to know whatever it is, we have to face it together. He nodded, a shadow of hope crossing his face. I promise. You're not alone in this. As he faded into the night, I returned to find Grace, sitting cross-legged on the porch, her small frame framed by the pale moonlight, watching me intently. The innocence in her eyes sparked a rush of defiance within me. Daddy, can we play inside? She asked softly, her voice trembling but bright with hope. Of course, sweetheart, I replied, forcing a smile to ease the worry etched across her tiny features. But let's keep the windows shut and the doors locked tonight, okay? That's okay, she replied matter-of-factly, wrapping her small fingers around mine as we stepped inside. Can we do that shadow game we played? My heart tugged painfully in my chest. The irony was bitter. I had spent years creating a sanctuary, only now to realize my nightmares seemed to nestle within it. Sure, we can play that, I whispered, squeezing her small hand tighter. As we settled into our familiar routine, shadows flickered at the edges of the room, playing tricks on my mind. Grace's laughter echoed through the dimly lit hallway as her innocence bounced off the walls, countering the darkness creeping in from every corner. But just as I slid the last book into place on the shelf, a soft sound, like a shuffling footstep, jolted me from behind. I spun around, my heart racing, only to find a shadow passing by the edge of the window where the curtains hung slightly ajar. Did you hear that, Grace? I whispered, trepidation cloaking my voice. She paused, her eyes wide and innocent, glancing toward where I was staring. "Daddy, it's just the wind, right?" But I felt it thin, a cold wave of breath creeping through the room. This wasn't the wind. It was fear that latched onto my chest as the shadow loomed closer, drawing me deeper into a chilling realization. The darkness wasn't just confined to Grace's nightmares. It was here, playing its own terrible game, advancing from the very edges of our sanctuary. As I turned slowly toward the window, my hand trembling, an unexpected scratch echoed from behind, a distinct, heart-stopping tap. My heartbeat thrummed in my ears, and as night enveloped the world outside, I realized that whatever I feared was no longer just a figment of Grace's imagination. It was here.
And it was watching.
The room felt suffocating as I stood petrified, frozen in time. The world outside the window was cloaked in darkness, yet the atmosphere inside was thick with the terror that rushed through every crevice, every heartbeat. I could feel the chill wrapping around me like a hand tightening its grip, pulling me closer to the edge of a precipice I had never wanted to approach. "Grace, honey, why don't we go to your room and play there?" I suggested, my voice weak and strained. The laughter that had once filled our home now sounded fragile, like glass ready to shatter.
"Why?"
"We're having fun here," she countered, a small frown creeping onto her face. It broke my heart to see her confusion. "Can we do the shadow game now, later?" "I promise. Later," I pressed, forcing a smile that felt far too strained. The shadows on the walls seemed to pulse with every beat of my heart, moving with a life of their own, and I barely noticed when her small hand slipped from mine as I ushered her toward her room. As we crept down the hallway, I glanced back at the window, my instincts screaming at me to take action, to protect her from whatever lurked beyond the glass. "We should turn the lights off and just cuddle up with a book, huh?" I said, attempting to divert her eagerness. "Okay," she agreed, her face lighting up momentarily. But the moment wasn't enough to chase away the shadows that crept deeper into my mind. In her room, I settled onto her bed beside her, clutching a familiar storybook. The words floated above the tension, but they felt distant, echoing through a fog that settled over us both. Grace snuggled close, her warmth a comforting shield against the unknown, yet I could sense her restlessness. The innocence that radiated from her seemed to challenge the oppressive darkness I could feel encroaching outside our fragile bubble. Just as I turned a page, a sudden knock reverberated through the room, sending a jolt through my heart. It was soft yet insistent, but it was the kind of sound that shattered the calm. In that moment, I caught sight of Grace's expression. Her wide eyes absorbed my fear, and I knew I had to be the calm in her storm even as my own heart raced.
"Daddy?"
she whispered, her voice seemingly caught in her throat. "Will you get that?" My throat felt drier than the desert as I set the book aside. "I need you to stay right here, okay? I'll be back in just a moment." Her nod seemed hesitant, filled with questions I dared not answer. Stepping into the dimly lit hallway, I felt the shadows curling around me as if eager to stake a claim. The house that had once felt like home now transformed into a lurking beast. With every step toward the door, I felt more and more like a puppet, strings pulled by an unseen hand. The knock came again, firmer this time, and I reached for the doorknob, my pulse thrumming like a drum in my ears. The door creaked open slowly, a sliver of light spilling out from behind me. Standing on the other side was a figure I barely recognized, cloaked in darkness, yet unmistakably familiar. It was Matthew, his face pale and drawn as if he had carried the weight of the world since our last encounter. "I'm sorry to come here like this," he whispered, glancing over his shoulder as though the shadows themselves conspired to steal him away. "I couldn't wait to tell you. What is it? What's wrong?" I asked, the foreboding urgency in my voice piercing through the fragile air. "I found something," he said, breathless and trembling. "Something that connects Grace to the other children, those who can see." "It's worse than I thought." His words sent my heart plummeting, sinking deep into unfathomable depths. I stepped back, gesturing for him to enter. The darkness folding itself around us as we stepped into the living room, blocked from the street view. What do you mean? I pressed, my voice laced with panic. What did you find? I searched for answers. My friend's story dug deep into a network of people, Matthew explained, his voice low and urgent. But this community of watchers, they know more than anyone realizes. Grace might not be the only one with this gift, but she's connected to something much larger, something ancient. And, I urged, terror coiling in my stomach, ready to squeeze until I could barely breathe. They believe there's a prophecy about a child who will lead them to a power that can change everything. The child who can see into the unknown. The room spiraled as dread twisted around me. A power? You're saying they want to use her, if they find her first? Yes. Matthew's voice dropped to a whisper, thick with the weight of impending doom. But it's not the only thing. They've already begun to watch. This is about more than just Grace. It's actually about a cycle repeated through generations.
She's a part of it.
The implications hit me like a hammer, shattering the fragile sense of safety I'd clung to. What cycle? What do you mean? Before he could respond, a sharp sound, like the scraping of nails against wood, echoed from the hallway, jolting both of us toward the source. My gaze met Matthew's startled expression, a mirror of the dread that flowed through me. Stay here, I whispered to Matthew, my voice trembling as I stepped cautiously back toward Grace's room. Just as I reached the threshold, Grace's soft voice resonated from within. Daddy? Can you come here? I see something in my dreams. My heart lurched violently. I turned to look back at Matthew. I need to protect her, I murmured, but as I stepped cautiously back into her room, a realization gripped me. This wasn't the time for fears or doubts. Whatever was watching, whatever was haunting our lives, I would face it head-on, even if it meant unraveling a truth I could scarcely comprehend. As I opened the door wider, I could only hope that in the darkness ahead, there was still a glimmer of light, a chance to shield her from the shadows curling ever nearer. And then, as Grace pointed to the dark corner of her room with wide, bright eyes, my breath caught when I realized I wasn't alone anymore. A shadow played against the wall, stretching and distorting like a living thing, and for the first time, I felt the chill of the unknown seep into my soul. The fear I harbored seemed so small against the enormity of what lay ahead. And with eyes wide with horror, I prepared to face whatever it was that had chosen to unearth the truths that were meant to remain buried. The world narrowed to a point of focus that was both terrifying and awe-inspiring as I stood frozen in the doorway, the flickering light casting an eerie glow that seemed to amplify the twisted shadow lurking in the corner. Grace, innocent as the dawn, beamed up at me, gesturing enthusiastically towards her newfound friend. Daddy, look. I made a new shadow friend. Her joyousness sliced through my heart, pitting her purity against the encroaching darkness that threatened to consume us. With each beat of my heart, uncertainty shadowed the edges of my mind. Grace, sweetheart, come here, I said, forcing my voice to sound steady even as it trembled at the edges. A primal instinct stirred within me, a parent's instinct strong enough to challenge the fear trying to claw its way to the surface. Yet, Grace remained blissfully unaware of the imminent danger she invited into her world. I think I need to take you somewhere safe, I replied, stepping forward, but her laughter turned to confusion, and she remained resolute, eyes gleaming with a peculiar mix of wonder and defiance towards the spectral figure in the corner. But Daddy, it's fun. It shows me stories.
Can't you see?
Her face glowed with conviction, an innocence too pure to grasp the peril lurking behind the captivating shadow.
No.
We need to go. My voice erupted with a fervor I hadn't intended, causing her expression to fall. The delighted light in her eyes flickered for a moment, and I quickly softened my tone. Please, Grace. Matthew stood awkwardly in the doorway, a specter himself in the dim light, the weight of his revelations still palpable. I could feel his gaze shift between us, concern twisting his features. She's not what we thought, is she? I mean the shadow. He ventured quietly, probing. Suddenly, I felt the warmth drain from the room, and the air thickened with the haunting chill of uncertainty. What do you mean? I asked, panic flaring once more in my chest. It's instinctive. Children often see more than we do, but it's not always harmless, he replied, his eyes darting nervously toward Grace and the uncanny form she had befriended. There are forces out there that can manipulate such connections. The sharp rasp of nails caught my ear once more, and a tremor coursed through my body as I made eye contact with Grace. Her gaze had shifted. She was no longer looking at the shadow but through it, lost in some unfathomable vision of her own.
They're sad, Daddy.
They want to play with me. Grace, I implored, urgency clawing at my throat. You need to listen to me. But as I extended a hand toward her, the shadow grew bolder, shifting, and I could see a darkened hand a smudge against the wall, beckoning her. My heart raced, caught between the desperate need to protect my daughter and the inexplicable pull that the shadow seemed to exert over her. She turned back to me, confusion returning. I don't want to go. I just want to stay here. Her voice trembled, and I saw her resolve begin to waver, the innocence of childhood battling the monstrous unknown. It was enough to break me, Grace, I said softer this time, approaching her like a wild animal, both fearful and mesmerized. Please, let's go back to reading. There's warmth in the stories. They'll be safer than this. Yet her wide eyes shimmered with something deeper than trust.
But they're lonely, Daddy.
They just want someone to play with, she repeated, and I felt my heart splinter at the realization that a part of her wanted to connect, to bridge the gap between her world and theirs. Suddenly, as if responding to her words, the shadow elongated further, and an overpowering urge surged within me, a compulsion to rush forward, to protect her, while the tangible shroud of reality pressed heavily against me. In a surge of palpable terror, I stepped in front of her, refusing to let this darkness snatch away her light. You're safe with me, I whispered fiercely, grounding myself in the truth of my love for her amidst the encroaching gloom. But just then, the shadows flickered sharply, revealing a figure more defined within the gloom, the frail outline of a child. One that mirrored Grace's own dimensions, yet twisted in a way that made my blood run cold. I gasped, and that's when I sensed it, a connection, something deeper, an echo of familiarity that sent a shiver through my spine, mingling terror with something else, something unsettling. Daddy, look. Grace pointed, and my heart sank. A name pulled itself from my subconscious, weaving through the thicket of my thoughts like a seducing whisper. A child I had seen in old photographs, a child from the past, the first in a cycle, perhaps. I shifted into a protective stance, but doubt began to creep into the corners of my heart. A part of me wanted to pull Grace away, to shield her from this possibility, to keep her innocence intact. But another, darker part, a reflection of fear and curiosity, urged me to pay attention, to understand the haunting presence that had appeared before us. And in that agonizing moment, as the shadow of my own history came to life, a realization blossomed with chilling Clarissa prophecy was beginning to unfold, and we were all trapped in its haunting embrace. As I faced the shadow, I knew that choosing to confront it would plunge us deeper into an uncertainty that I was far from ready to meet. The door of despair had cracked open, and we stood at the threshold, unprepared to embrace what lay waiting beyond it. Daddy, please. Grace begged, and the urgency in her voice pulled me back from the brink, the shadows swirling more violently with her plea. Heart pounding, I grappled with the reality that everything I thought I knew about our lives was about to be reshaped, and as the memory of the other child lingered in my mind like a candlelight flickering in the dark, I couldn't help but wonder who truly held the power, or the shadows we had yet to understand. The air hung heavy, suffocating with the weight of impending choices. As the unfamiliar child's figure beckoned in the corner of the room, I felt an overwhelming wave of confusion swell within me. How was I supposed to protect Grace from something that seemed so innocent, yet was undeniably wrapped in an aura of foreboding? The very ground beneath us seemed to shift, and I could feel Matthew's nervous presence, a silent supporter ready to untangle this web of shadows with me. Grace, I whispered, desperately trying to redirect her attention. Let's go for a walk. Anywhere but here. The urgency in my voice was palpable, and I knew I had to find a way to draw her away from the curling tendrils of darkness creeping in. But she stood resolute, eyes glimmering with a mix of longing and curiosity. "Daddy, please. They just want a friend." A tremor of frustration and helplessness surged through me as I glanced at Matthew, who seemed to share in my mounting dread.
"What if she needs to understand?"
he murmured, clearly as troubled by the specter of our own past as I was a past I thought I had buried long ago. "What if this is tied to everything? To what?" I shot back, my voice tinged with anxiety. What could possibly compel her to want this? "She's a child. Maybe it's not just about us right now," he said, eyes darting nervously between Grace and the spectral figure. "What if we're the ones who need to face this?" I felt the ground beneath my feet tremble ever so slightly at the thought. My heart raced, a muted drum heralding an inescapable truth. This was not our first encounter with the shadows. How could I have forgotten? A memory stirred, an earlier embrace of darkness that had left its mark on my soul. Then, in that haunting haze, I saw the delicate features of the shadow child paralleled in the soft curves of Grace's face. A tragic slide of inevitability churned in my gut. This child was a lingering question, a vein of perdition flowing from a family legacy I had tried so hard to escape. I dare say, she haunted me in dreams, the fear of failing again locked in an insidious embrace with the dread of confronting the darkness that came with the bloodline. "Grace, listen." I knelt, reaching for her hands, my resolve teetering on the edge of desperation. "I know you want to help, but we can't play with shadows. They only bring heartache." Her gaze faltered, momentarily caught between my fervent plea and the whisper of the shadow that mirrored her light. "But how do you know, Daddy?" she challenged, voice trembling as she glanced once more at the figure. "What if they're like me? What if they need to play, too, Grace? All I want is to protect you," I murmured, almost pleading as I took in the sight of her innocence, her trust in the pulsating darkness, and the fragile connection slowly unraveling between us. My heart felt fit to burst, torn between the light in her eyes and the chilling truth that lay within the shadows. "Sometimes being a friend means not being able to stay," I added, feeling the breath of despair hitch in my throat. "There are things we don't understand yet. Things that could hurt us. Please." Out of nowhere, a low wail echoed through the air, and the shadow child shifted, revealing more of its shape. I sensed anger, sorrow raw, primal emotions swirling like ghosts trapped in echoes. My resolve buckled, fear clawing at my insides. I could almost discern whispered secrets in the aching air, unraveling around us like threads woven into a tapestry of loss. Daddy, Grace's voice cracked, sorrow flooding her eyes as she turned toward the phantom. "She's been waiting a long time." That simple sentence struck my heart with a force that stole my breath. This was starting to feel less like a child's imaginary friend, and more like a tether to the past I could neither understand nor fully escape. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the room, surrounding us with a chilling surge that snuffed out the light, plunging us into a velvety darkness, lit only by the chilling clarity of Grace's words. "They want to tell us something," she murmured, her freckled face illuminated by the faintest glimmer of the ghostly child's outline, eyes shimmering with untold stories. "Grace," I gasped, a cold shiver racing down my spine as I motioned to pull her to me, but her small hands remained rooted to the spot, a visceral curiosity holding her in place, threatening to unearth what lay hidden just beyond our understanding. The eyes of the figure glowed faintly, and I felt something shift in the atmosphere pressing down on us, like the slow ascent of heavy fog that shrouds a traveler lost, afraid, yet hopeful. As I watched, the shadow child reached out, the gesture both innocent and enticing. My heart thundered in my chest, caught in a cyclone of uncertainty. Was this an invitation or a trap? The shadow seemed to pulse in response to my trepidation, echoing through my thoughts, intertwining my fears with the profound need to know. And for the first time, fear gripped me, strangling my resolve as time slowed.
"Don't."
I shouted in a frantic surge, but it was too late. Grace stepped forward, an irresistible urge drawing her into the enigmatic realm, a dimension tethered to something far more profound than either of us could grasp. "Grace." I reached out, terror swirling through me like a tempest as I stumbled to catch her, gripping the fabric of her dress just as the phantom child extended a hand toward my own daughter. The light within Grace flickered, caught at the brink of possibility, and the shadows danced around us with a sinister grace. In that agonizing moment, as I felt the fabric of reality thread thin, a sobering realization washed over his was merely the beginning. We were on the precipice of a revelation that threatened to unravel us, pulling at the seams of my heart as I grasped for the connection between past and present, light and shadow, family and despair. And as I locked eyes with Grace, now just a heartbeat from the dark embrace threatening our bond, I was left consumed by the dread that this encounter could not possibly end well. Would I be able to rescue her from the depths of this haunting pull, or would I ultimately fail the very promise I had made to protect her? I stumbled forward, the world around me blurring into a fragmented haze of light and shadow. "Grace!" I cried out again, my voice breaking as I fought against the growing chasm that yawned between us. The phantom child's hand hung in the air, an ethereal invitation laced with danger, as if it were the thread that would weave our fates beyond the reach of our current reality. In that heart-stopping moment, I felt the fragile leash of my sanity starting to snap. I had always been a protector. I had made a promise to shield Grace from the darkness I had known, but now it felt as if she were the one steering us both towards an abyss I could not fathom. Panic surged through me, a guttural instinct driven by love and fear, and my thoughts spiraled into chaos. "Please don't," I implored, desperation tinging my voice. I reached for her, grasping at air, but as I lunged forward, a sudden hush enveloped the room. The shadows swirled, momentarily stilling as if the universe held its breath, waiting. Everything felt suspended, taut with the weight of anticipation, and I could see the glow of Grace's eyes flickering with uncertainty. "It's okay, Daddy. I just want to know," she whispered, her voice a fragile thread stretching toward the unknown. The shadow child mirrored her uncertainty, its features softening, though I could sense a storm brewing within the depths of its gaze. "What do you want to know?" I demanded, desperation spilling from the edges of my resolve, flooding the space around us with anguish. What could possibly be worth risking everything? "You don't understand what you're reaching for." The fabric of time felt thin, as if the air had pulled taut, electric with tension. The shadows obscured my sight, but all at once, a vision crashed over me, a fleeting glimpse of another life woven together with our own. It felt tantalizing and horrifying, the chaotic symphony of voices overlapping, whispers carried through cycles of pain and sorrow, families torn apart by things they couldn't comprehend. Then, from the depths of that indistinct history, a familiar face emerged, one I thought I had buried within my heart, the specter of a missed opportunity that haunted my dreams. It was my sister, Amelia, laughing Neo, dancing lost in a world untouched by the darkness that claimed her far too soon. In that heartbeat I understood. The shadows were not just linked to my past, they echoed the loss of those we cherished, bending time and reality with their longing. "Grace, please." My voice rose, trembling with ferocity. "We have to go. This is not a path we can follow. Those shadows are all that remains of the life we lost. They won't bring you a friend. They'll take you away." Her expression flickered, uncertainty wavered like a candle flame, and I realized I was running out of time. "You're stronger than this," I urged her, nearing desperation. "You've always been my light. Please don't let it go." As if sensing my resolve, the shadow child stepped back, a flickering ember of hope in its eyes mirrored by Grace's own. I could see her wavering, the essence of trust binding us in a fragile thread, twisting through heartache and determination. "What is it that binds you to her?" A voice reverberated through the stillness, thick with unease. Matthew stood behind me, the look in his eyes fierce yet uncertain. "Why does she seem to know Grace?" The shadow child responded with a low, melodic hum that cradled the air, an echoing lament that swirled and twisted like breeze through autumn leaves. I turned, feeling Matthew's presence like anchor amidst the tempest, straining against the unseen forces pulling us apart, Amelia the apparition whispered, and the name twisted inside my chest, scratching against memories I thought had lain dormant. The edges of reality shimmered, tearing across the silence between us, revealing shared sorrow buried in the foundations of our bond. I had shut my heart against the echoes of memory, determined to spare Grace the suffering of our past. Yet here, now, everything felt inextricably linked, our fates tied through loss as much as love. "Why here?" Matthew asked, softly, his voice trembling slightly.
Why now?
Then, the moment shattered. A sudden surge of energy flared through the room, the shadows twisting violently, enveloping us in an embrace of yearning. Grace's small hand shot out, reaching for the ghostly figure, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and fascination. "Grace!" I shouted again, but time slowed. I felt the walls closing in, the tether between us fraying, unable to withstand the weight of our shared past. An unbearable urgency surged through me, begging me to act, urging me to grasp my daughter before she could slip from my fingers and dance away into the unknown forever. But just as I lunged, the specter let out a wail that echoed through the silence, shattering the atmosphere with a raw, haunting power. I felt the unease coil within, burrowing into my chest, a final piece of darkness, seeking to claim the light. In that harrowing moment, just as Grace teetered on the edge of acceptance, something shattered behind Maya mirror, echoing the past as glass spiraled inward into a millstone of reflection. Within that broken reality, a face emerged, a knowing smile that echoed deep in my heart as a chilling truth clawed its way forth. "Daddy," Grace whispered, eyes wide with realization. What if she's not just a ghost? What if she's our family?" The world trembled on the edge of revelation, and just when I thought I would lose everything, a new shadow flickered at the edges of the room, a figure standing calmly amidst the fractured glass, eyes glimmering with a sadness only I seemed to recognize. The ground beneath me felt searingly fragile, and I teetered backward, a haunting familiarity washing over me as the truth threatened to breach the surface once more. I was left gasping, caught in the tempest of a memory long buried, knowing this journey was just beginning to uncover the tangled truths of our past, and to face the choices that could either shatter us or bind us anew. As the chaotic tempest in the room began to settle, the new figure illuminated by the jagged shards cast an unexpected warmth across the coldness of the shadows. I squinted through the haze, my heart hammering in my chest as recognition washed over me like a wave, threatening to drown me in its depths. "Mom?" The word slipped from my lips in disbelief, barely a whisper against the turbulent silence that enveloped us like a coffin made of regret and longing. There she stood, radiant yet tinged with a sadness that belied the joy of our reunification. My mother, her image crafted from the essence of memories, her fragrance, a reminder of hope, her presence, a blend of comfort and sorrow. Grace's small hand tightened around mine, grounding me in the current of despair and wonder that rippled through the air. She was clutching my fingers as if they were a lifeline in waters that threatened to consume her. "Is that really her, Daddy?" she breathed, her voice trembling as uncertainty cut through the fragile barrier of my heart. "I think it is," I replied, fighting against the storm rising within me. "But she isn't just a ghost, Grace. She's tied to us, to everything we've lost." Trusting a sentimental illusion felt dangerous, yet my need to believe surged within me. The spectral figure shifted, her eyes glistening with unacknowledged pain. "You've both been fighting so hard," she said softly, her voice wrapping around our hearts like a soft quilt. "But it doesn't have to be this way." My mind reeled, twisting in a kaleidoscope of emotions. "For so long, we thought you were gone," I stammered, my voice cracking under the weight of revelation. "How can you be here?" Each word felt like a plea, searching for answers while my heart battled skepticism over the bloody truth of our family's history. "I never left, not really," she replied, her gaze drifting towards the shadow child. "Our choices have kept me at bay, but love binds us just as tightly." Her words reverberated in the empty space around us, a reminder that the toll of our past demanded acknowledgement and forgiveness. "Matthew," still holding onto whatever small semblance of reality he could grasp, stared in disbelief. But how? How can you reappear now? There's so much we didn't understand. His question lanced through the vulnerability shrouding the moment, exposing raw wounds that lay unhealed between our families. With a delicate grace, my mother extended her hand towards the shadow child, a bridge meant to span the darkness that haunted us all. You must trust in the ties that bind us, she spoke, her voice a melodic echo. Face the truth of our family. It is the only way forward. But even as her words wrapped around the room, darkness surged like an angry tide, pulling me towards the edge of dread. What truth? I questioned, anger boiling beneath the surface. What price must we pay to understand the binds of love? A shift surged through the atmosphere as the shadow child drew closer, echoing the familiar cadence of my mother's voice. The room pulsed with tension, and both Grace and I glanced toward the darkness and the light. Caught in a balance I wasn't sure we could withstand, a note of sadness settled in my mother's eyes. Sometimes embracing the truth means confronting the choice to let go. You must decide what stays and what is set free. She took a step towards me, arms outstretched, a gesture filled with longing and regret. But the moment was shattered as a blinding light exploded from the center of the room. The shards of the broken mirror absorbed every ounce of darkness, throwing it back upon us in chaos. I covered my eyes, feeling my heart race anew, punctuated by the howling winds of past decisions returning to haunt us. Grace. My voice cut through the maelstrom, raw and urgent. But instead of my daughter's reassuring voice, I heard her whispering without words, entangled in a slick mire of emotions. What do we do? The world distorted as I tried to move, feeling like a marionette whose strings had been cut, caught between the past's unyielding grip and my daughter's uncertain future. We find a way to break free. I yelled against the howling winds, desperate to slay the shadows rising in fierce rebellion around us. We have to embrace what was, face what is, my mother's voice echoed from within the tempest, a haunting reminder of all that had transpired and all that lay ahead. Just as the chaos enveloped us, a sharp crack like thunder boomed through the air, causing the shadows to writhe in agony as if afraid to reveal their secrets. And in that cacophony, I felt something shift, somber and profound, threatening to break down the walls I had erected to protect Grace from the horrors of our legacy. In that moment, I caught a glimpse of something glimmering in the corner of the chaotic storm, a hidden truth emerging, beckoning me toward revelation and potential heartbreak. As it flashed brightly, the room staggered into tumult, leaving us on the precipice of the unknown, me heart aching for something I hadn't yet identified. Dad. Grace cried, pulling me closer, her small voice slicing through the chaos, anchoring me in an ethereal spiral of our torn reality. Clutching her to me, I felt the universe narrowing, time spiraling into a singular point of inevitable reckoning. Each heartbeat echoed with questions that threatened to remain unanswered as I leaned into the storm, desperate to grab hold of the truth that could either stitch our fragmented past together or tear us apart forever. As the chaos of twilight swirled around us, I stood at the epicenter of a storm, the air buzzing with potential, grief, and longing. My heart ached with the weight of all that had been lost and all that hung in the balance. Grace clutched my hand tighter, our fingers intertwined, offering a fragile anchor amid the turmoil. The shadows lunged around us, dark tendrils reaching out as if to pull us into the abyss. But I wouldn't let them. Not now. Not ever. Grace, I whispered urgently, my voice slicing through the swirling darkness. You have to trust me. Whatever happens, I promise to protect you. The sincerity in my voice wrapped around her like a lifeline, and I could see her expression shift from trepidation to determination. Together, we prepared to face the unknown. My mother, the echo of a ghost long buried, stood firm beside us, a beacon of strength emerging from the shrouded past. You can rewrite the story, she said, her voice resonating through the chaos like a soothing balm. The power lies within you both. Embrace the love that connects us, and you'll always find your way home. As she spoke, the shadow child shifted, a flicker of light igniting in its ethereal gaze. The darkness around us pulled back momentarily, revealing a flicker of what lay below: yearning, pain, and release. The unspoken manifestations of my past, my suffering, tangled intricately with the newfound light that Grace exuded. Mom? I turned to the familiar figure standing steadfast. How do we break free? My heart trembled as the shadows pulsed, threatening to consume us once more. I felt the tremor of the past held in her gaze, a reminder of all we had endured. You must acknowledge the truth that binds you, she replied softly. Face the pain of loss, but also the love that has never faded away. It's time to forgive, to truly see the light. In that moment, an overwhelming wave of understanding surged through me. I had spent my life fighting against the darkness that had stolen so much from me, shielding Grace from the legacy that haunted us. Yet here, amidst the chaos, I realized that only through acceptance could we unveil the hidden truths trapped in the shadows. Together, Grace, I said, kneeling to meet her eyes. We'll face this together. No more hiding. We own our story. We are brave, like you said. As the shadows writhed once more, I squeezed her hand, watching her shake with fear but also with an unyielding spark of courage. Taking a deep breath, I faced the darkness that danced in the corners of the room and raised our joined hands toward the shadows. We are more than what has been taken from us. We are love. We are light. You don't own us anymore. The echo of my voice reverberated like the crackling of lightning, radiating through the room, bolder than the shadows that flickered around us. And as I stood there, with Grace beside me, something shifted. It was as if the shadows hesitated, their grip slackening. Remember us, the shadow child whispered, as its form began to tremble and dissolve slightly. We learned through pain. But love endures. The figure flickered, showing flashes of our past, joy, laughter, sorrow, a tapestry of shared moments that shaped who we were. It tangled with the pain of loss but also with the beauty of love. I turned to Grace, my heart swelling with an emotion I hadn't fully embraced until that moment. We can't erase our past, but we can choose how to honor it. We can decide who we become. I saw a glimmer of comprehension in her eyes, her small frame standing tall in determination, courageous and unyielding, just like me. In that pivotal moment, I felt the warmth of my mother's presence wrap around us, a protective embrace against the tendrils of sadness that threatened to ensnare us once more. I'm proud of you both. The light within will guide you through the darkest of shadows. And as my mother's figure flickered, the darkness began to recoil, the shadows retreating like waves ebbing at the shore. Grace took a tentative step forward, and I followed suit. We approached the fading figure, heartbeats synchronizing as we braved the final step. Together, we understood that forgiveness was more powerful than pain, that love was a potent shield against despair. Let go of fear and embrace your light, my mother echoed, her voice now distant, yet resonating even deeper within me. With a final surge, she smiled at Grace and me, an ethereal drift into the embrace of twilight as her form faded into a sanguine glow, leaving behind an ember that burst into brilliant light. As the shadows flickered and faded, a flood of warmth encapsulated us, binding the delicate threads of our family's legacy, the shadows transforming into radiant strands of hope that danced before our eyes. I held Grace tighter, and together, we stepped into the light. Are we going to be okay, Daddy? She asked softly, her voice trembling but filled with newfound belief. Yes, sweetheart, I replied, feeling the weight of the world lifted from my shoulders. We're safe now. We'll always be okay because we have each other. And as I looked down at my daughter, I saw not just fear but the light of courage that flickered in her own heart. Our journey together, a tapestry of love woven through darkness. A cycle broken, beneath the soft embrace of the moonlight filtering through the remnants of the shadows. I knew we had rewritten our story. Our hearts brimmed with the promise of a new dawn, a new beginning forged from pain but anchored in unyielding love. And as we stood together, hand in hand, facing the horizon of possibility, the echoes of our past faded into whispers, no longer drowning us but guiding us forward. In that moment, I understood light will always find a way to break through the deepest darkness. The final battle had been fought, and we had emerged whole, together. And as we took our first steps into the dawn, I promised to cherish every heartbeat with this bright spirit by my side. We are love, we are laughter, and above all, we are and always will be unbreakable.